will affect him once he is out of prison.
So the one big piece of information we're still waiting for, though, is the bail issue and whether he goes straight to prison or is out for a time beforehand.
And that may be for him just as important as the 3 to 10 years, because he will move to this judge. If this judge denies it, his lawyers will immediately go to an appellate judge, and they will ask that his sentence be stayed pending appeal. And what they mean by that is they want him to go home while the appeal is pending. And the reason for that, in his particular situation, is his age. Because his appeal, which could take a couple of years, and if it is ultimately decided in his favor, no court really wants him serving a sentence that could be reversed. But this judge is very confident, I am sure, that he did not commit judicial error.
All right, we mentioned Jerika's outside the courtroom. Let's go to Jerika now, if we can. Jerika, what are you hearing and seeing there?
Well, we're hearing people loud. We're hearing people shouting. We're also hearing that the judge said that the verdict, the jury's verdict from April, must be heard loud and clear. Also hearing that several of the accusers of Bill Cosby are in that courtroom, and as that sentence was read, they were arm in arm, some of them even sobbing. You can only imagine what Andrea Constand must be feeling in all of this. She actually read a very small portion of her victim's impact statement yesterday, but we were able to get a full copy of what she said to the court, and I just want to read some of this to give you a sense of what she must be feeling right now. She says, "I have often asked myself why the burden of being the sole witness in 2 criminal trials had to fall to me. The pressure was enormous," she said, "but I had to testify. It was the right thing to do." She goes on to say, "Bill Cosby took my beautiful, healthy young spirit and crushed it. He robbed me of my health and vitality, my open nature, and my trust in myself and others. I am looking forward to looking forward," she says. "I want to get to the place where the person I was meant to be gets a second chance." So again, just to reiterate, this case goes back almost 3 years when Bill Cosby was charged with aggravated indecent assault at the end of December in 2015, close to the time that the statute of limitations was about to run out. The district attorney's office reopens this case. It goes to trial in 2017, but as you recall, it was a mistrial because the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict. But in that second trial in April, it was a conviction on all counts for Bill Cosby. And as you mentioned, now hearing that he will be going to state prison, 3 to 10-year sentence. We are getting emails right now as we speak from people inside. It's our understanding that the appeals arguments are underway, so we're still not quite sure what that means in terms of the bail, whether or not Bill Cosby will ultimately be able to go home tonight or whether he will spend time in a county correctional facility and then be transferred to the State Correctional Institute of Phoenix. A court official earlier told me if he is remanded, he will be brought out in handcuffs and he will be processed at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility about 6 miles from here. But obviously we're waiting to hear from some of those accusers, as well as Andrea Constand, the woman at the heart and soul of this case.
Okay, Jerika, thanks very much. We do have a radio reporter inside the courtroom who has said, Ricky, that there were 7 victims in a row behind him, arm in arm, all crying as this took place. As Bill Cosby again sentenced today, just moments ago, to 3 to 10 years in prison. Jerika, Ricky was talking a little bit about where he will end up. Can you talk about that for just a moment?
Sure. Jerika is correct that he will be assessed first at the Montgomery County facility, and then he's going to go into a state prison system. Now, when he is assessed, he could wind up in general population, which are cells of 2 people each. He could also wind up in a medical facility, which is highly likely in terms of his health, his blindness, and a medical facility being at the state prison. State prisons, by the way, in Pennsylvania in particular, they do have facilities for people who are older and have difficulties.
Breaking news just coming in. We just heard the judge has refused Cosby's request for bail.
Not a surprise to me.
Straight to prison.
Straight to prison. They will now go straight up, that is his lawyers, to try to get a stay pending appeal based on errors that they believe were committed at the trial. They have a laundry list of errors. They have substantial issues for appeal. They are not frivolous.
Okay. Ricky Kleeman, thank you very much. Jerika Duncan as well outside the courthouse. Much more about the Cosby story, the Kavanaugh nomination, and the president's address to the UN, and more on your local news on this CBS station and our 24-hour streaming news service, CBSN, and then right here tonight on the CBS Evening News. Till then, I'm Jeff Glor, CBS News in New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.
Your medicine might not be as secure from your kids as you think.
Wait till you see how long it took these kids to open up these bottles.
A new and growing tax scam. Do they file the bogus return in your name?
Yes.
What should you do if this happens?
If you're getting calls or emails, hang up the phone. The IRS does not operate that way.
Not a frivolous appeal.
Well, we want to continue to follow the breaking news. Bill Cosby has been sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for sexual assault. CBS News correspondent Jerika Duncan is outside the courthouse now in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Jerika, tell us what more you can tell us about the details of the sentencing.
Well, right now there are a number of people still inside that courtroom, but we can only imagine what Andrea Constand must be feeling. We're hearing that Cosby accusers were linked arm in arm, some of them sobbing at times. Again, just getting word that Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. This goes back almost 3 years ago. When you look at this case, at the end of December of 2015, he was charged with aggravated indecent assault. The first trial ended in a mistrial, and the second one last April ended in his conviction. The district attorney had asked the judge for 5 to 10 years, so this is very close to the realm of what the district attorney asked for. We heard briefly yesterday from Andrea Constand. She read a little bit from her victim impact statement, but we actually were able to get a copy of that today. And I just want to read you some quotes of what she said in here for the court, just to give you a sense of what she must be feeling. She said, "I have often asked myself why the burden of being the sole witness in 2 criminal trials had to fall on me. The pressure was enormous," she said, "but I had to testify. It was the right thing to do. Bill Cosby took my beautiful, healthy, young spirit and crushed it," she says. "He robbed me of my health and vitality, my open nature, and my trust in myself and in others. I am looking forward to looking forward. I want to get to the place where the person I was meant to be gets a second chance." On top of being sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison, Rena, Bill Cosby will now be designated as a sexually violent predator. What does that mean? It means that he will be required to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. He pretty much has to let the state of Pennsylvania know about his every movement, as well as his name, his address, and what he's been convicted of will appear on a state website for all to see. The defense had argued at points in this sentencing hearing that Bill Cosby be able to serve time at home on house arrest, but the prosecution was adamant that that would be a get out of jail free card, according to the district attorney. So they were really efforting to see that Bill Cosby spent time behind bars. I'm hearing a little bit of activity behind me. Some folks are coming out of the courthouse. We are getting emails right now from people that are still in there. Just to hear arguments on bail. They are recessing apparently to hear arguments on bail. That's significant because, again, it's our understanding that the judge denied requests for bail, and that would mean that Bill Cosby could presumably spend the night and the rest of the next few nights and years in prison. So we're waiting to find out if that will remain the case, that bail is denied. And what that ultimately means in terms of him being remanded first to the Montgomery County Correctional Facility about 6 miles from here, before then having to go to the State Correctional Institute of Phoenix.
All right,
Rena?
Jerika, thank you so much. If you could hang with us for just a second, I want to bring in CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman, who joins me now on set. Ricky, I want to pick up that last point Jerika had about the bail. It seems to us that the judge may be denying bail. Are you surprised by that, if that's in fact the case?
No, not with Judge O'Neill. Judge O'Neill has been very strict in this case. It is clear how he feels about this defendant. He has dealt with this defendant and his myriad of lawyers for 2 trials and a slew of motions, and Judge O'Neill was ready to say enough is enough. So no, it doesn't surprise me. At the same time, we cannot, if we look at it from my lawyer's point of view, as opposed to from a woman's point of view. But as a lawyer, I say this. There are substantial issues here for appeal. This is not a frivolous appeal. There are issues that go all the way back to the fact that when you first deal with Bill Cosby and he entered into the civil litigation way back, that he eventually settled for $3.4 million with Andrea Constand, that he testified without fear of his testimony, with the belief that he says he had a promise from the previous DA that he would not be prosecuted. He could have taken the Fifth Amendment. He did not. His statements in that deposition then, eventually when the deposition got unsealed so many years later, opened the door for the rather extraordinary number, somewhere in the vicinity of 60 women who have accused Bill Cosby, who never would have done so until that deposition became public.
So, Ricky, I just want to be clear here. So when you're saying that he gave this deposition, do you believe that Cosby's attorneys have solid legal footing to come back and appeal this?
Well, they have grounds for appeal. Whether or not the case is ultimately reversed is up to an appellate court. But this is not just lawyers saying, oh, we're going to appeal. He has issues after issues after issues in this case.
Ricky, I just want to bring in our Jerika Duncan. She actually has some new details to report. Jerika.
So I'm just hearing from someone inside that the judge says the court denied bail pending an appeal, but will now consider arguments from the defense and a memo presented to him from the Commonwealth and his decision. So we are trying to make sense of all of that. Ricky, I'll leave it to you to kind of help us understand what that means.
Thank you so much, Jerika. What does that mean exactly, pending an appeal, Ricky?
Well, during the appellate process, which could take a couple of years, the question is Bill Cosby going to spend those couple of years in prison, and with the chance that the case could be reversed on appeal, in which case he wouldn't have had to have done a day. So also, in light of his age, and what clearly appears that he is not a flight risk, he has been here through all of these years, what the defense is saying is, Judge, wait a minute, we have all these issues for appeal. It doesn't mean we ultimately win, but they do have merit. The Commonwealth, the prosecution, is saying none of these issues ultimately have merit. They have been fully litigated, and the case is not going to be reversed. So it's time for you to face the piper.
So what's your sense, Ricky? I know we don't have a crystal ball here, but way the judicial system works, he's 81 years old. He has cited, his eyesight as being an issue, health issues. Where do you see this headed? Will he ultimately serve time in prison?
Well, ultimately, yes. Whether that's today or whether that may be years from now, one believes that he is going to serve some of this time in prison. And this judge, I just cannot see this judge reversing himself. I think this judge is going to send him now. And it would be up to an appellate court to say, okay, wait a minute, he's 81, he might die before the appeal is ever decided, and so we should send him home. The Commonwealth, the government, has the right to say, look, we have facilities that deal with people who are old. We have facilities who deal with people in ill health, including the issue of his blindness. That does not give him a pass.
Ricky, how significant is this Cosby verdict for the Me Too movement?
Highly significant. It is the very first criminal verdict of guilty and now sentence to prison that has happened in this country. Keep this in mind as well, Rena. We've had two trials of Bill Cosby. Trial number one, which ended in a hung jury in the summer of 17, was a trial that came before the onslaught of Roger Ailes to Bill O'Reilly as the dominoes ultimately fell to Harvey Weinstein, which clearly led to the unburdening of the Me Too movement. Bill Cosby then does trial number two in April of 2018, almost a year later, at the height of the Me Too movement. Timing is everything in life. If Bill Cosby had gone to trial the second time between June and October of 2017, it is possible, I'm not saying it is probable, but it is possible that you might have had another hung jury. The fact, and even looking at the hung jury, that it was certainly said that there were enough acquittal votes in that hung jury. I suppose it's even possible he could have been acquitted. But once that Me Too movement started, there was a whole shift in how we regard the allegations of one woman, let alone a woman who is then bolstered, in this case, by 5 other accusers. So it is a significant part of the Me Too movement and will be a watershed moment.
I want to head back to Jerika Duncan. Jerika, I'm curious what the reaction is for some of these accusers who were there in the courtroom today.
Again, what we were hearing is that many of them, again, not necessarily part of what got Bill Cosby the conviction, but the ones who've been here throughout, the first, the second trial, some from all across the country who came here in support of Andrea Constand, and some who have said that Bill Cosby sexually assaulted them as well, were arm in arm apparently when the sentencing was read, some of them sobbing at times, very emotional. The judge saying at one point, a jury's verdict must be heard loud and clear, kind of going back to what Ricky just mentioned about her not seeing this judge reversing in his decision in reference to this appeal. We do see a few victims, or accusers, excuse me, that have come out. One woman, you can't see her right now, but she actually testified in the second trial. I just saw Janice Dickinson, who also testified in the second trial. I think she might be talking to our affiliate. But we are waiting. We are waiting. There's a recess, I believe. We have some people inside, so we're getting notes from them, waiting to get any updates. But again, this is a good day, without a doubt, for Andrea Constand because she saw this thing through. And I even remember in that first trial, even though it didn't end the way that she wanted, I remember her posting a short video on Twitter where she's playing basketball, and she says something to the effect of always follow through. Now, we know that she is a former basketball player, and she actually met Bill Cosby when she was working at Temple University as the operations manager. But it speaks to her commitment to seeing this case through. Here she was, someone that went to police in 2005. The case was pretty much closed after 2 weeks of looking into it under a different district attorney, and the new evidence, information came forward from depositions, from a civil lawsuit, and that is what prompted this district attorney's office to then try and figure out if they had enough information and evidence to pursue a case. And in that case, they decided aggravated indecent assault was what they could charge Cosby on, and what they believed even almost 3 years ago that they could get a conviction on. But again, I know in the very beginning, if people are just tuning in, want to go back to some of the things that Andrea Constand said in her victim impact statement. I often asked myself why the burden of being the sole witness in 2 criminal trials had to fall on me. The pressure was enormous, but I had to testify. It was the right thing to do. So again, this speaks to someone who has talked about, you know, having a really tough time with this. Her mother testified yesterday with a victim impact statement, her father and her older sister, and she really basically talked about how this has changed her whole life, that she doesn't really have close friends, so to speak. She really only trusts her family. She talked about how this has created trust issues for her, even as an adult now. So
it is hard.
We are interested, obviously, in hearing from her. We're not sure if she'll be making any statements later. She did not after the second trial, which was the conviction. But we imagine that maybe she might actually have something to say to the general public, to the media. She obviously thanked a lot of people in this victim impact statement, from the district attorney to the 2 prosecutors who also were very diligent about getting a conviction.
You know, I want to ask Ricky about that. What Drika said, being the burden of being the sole witness, as Andrea Constand had talked about. Part of the issue why her testimony was so valuable was we talk about the statute of limitations, right? There's some 5 decades of over 60 people who have come forward accusing Cosby of this. Do you ever see that law changing? So many women who have faced sexual assault have not been able to come forward because that statute of limitations has expired. Is that ever going to change, Ricky?
Sure it is, and it is in state by state, little by little. And that really is in great part not only a result of the Me Too movement, because we do realize as a society that women, let alone children, do not come forward in 80% of cases or more at the time that things happen because of fear, because of shame, because of the possibility of retaliation. And what we've also learned, look, we're in Pennsylvania here. We have just looked at the predatory priest cases where you have in Pennsylvania hundreds upon hundreds of children who then became part as adults of a grand jury report that although the statute of limitations had expired, that there was corroborative evidence because the church had kept records of this abuse and moving people around.
Yeah.
So this is happening state by state. We have seen it happen in California. We've seen it happen in New York, where the statute of limitations is going away. And I think it's particularly valuable, not only in the case of women and perhaps men who have been victims of sexual assault, but for the work I've done working at the Rape Treatment Center when I was living in Los Angeles. It is critical for children. It is just critical that what happens is a child reaches the age of 18, and then the statute was always told till then, but then it ran fast. So someone knows that they were abused as a child, perhaps repeatedly, by a trusted individual, by a loved one, let alone a stranger, and yet they reach the age of 18 and they can't come to grips with it. And it takes years for them to get into therapy and then to go back and talk about what happened by perhaps not only a member of the clergy or a relative, but a coach. We've certainly seen it in the Larry Nassar case. This is unfortunately not unusual. So what the ending of many of these statutes of limitation, it will take work, but state by state, I predict that eventually they will all go away.
Wow.
When it comes to sexual assault.
Remarkable to hear you say that. Ricky Kleeman, I want to thank you. We've got more developments. Jerika Duncan as well out in Norristown. We are expecting at 2:40 p.m. The court to take back up the issue of the bail. We are going to have that live, and we'll have much more. Hopefully you two women can still stay on with us and join us throughout the afternoon. We'll have much more ahead. This is CBSN. Well, Instagram's co-founders are leaving the social media network. It was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion in 2012. In a statement, they said they are, quote, grateful for the last